Rod Fleming in the Philippines here, and I hope you're all well. This is a follow-up to my last one, which was called How to Make Love to a Ladyboy, and so we'll call this More Making Love to Ladyboys. Before we get there, remember please, do subscribe, do like, and please try and send us something on one of the donation sites, the names of which and URLs of which I will give you. And they're just coming up on the screen just now. So, if you watched the last one, I was quite interested in what happened because a surprising number of questions came through. So I feel I kind of have to address some of them, and some of it will be a little bit, One of the questions I was asked was, and some of them are really, iffy, was what about the smell? Well, there is no smell, none at all. If the girl has cleaned herself properly. Absolutely not. Completely odorless. Nothing. It's just not there. So don't worry about it. I'm kind of shocked by someone actually asking that, and someone did, because it's like, don't you clean yourself? Anyway, no, Asian women in particular are absolutely squeaky clean. There is absolutely no way that you're going to get that kind of problem with them. So no smell. So with that out of the way, the next thing to address, going back to cleanliness, is what do you do when you're traveling? Or what do you do when, you don't have the advantage of one of the bum gun attachments that I showed you in the last video? Well, the trick here is a thing called a douche bottle, which is basically sometimes called an enema bottle, but it's basically a plastic bottle that's squeezable. You can squeeze it, and you fill it with water and inject it up yourself, and do the same as before. And if you're traveling to places where, well, your girl, I accept it's not the guy who has to do this, it's the girl. If you're going with your beloved partner to someplace where you're not quite sure what the local conditions will be like our auntie's place, then you take yourself your little douche bottle, and that's all you need to do. And again, I will stress, you don't put soap or detergent or anything in it at all, just plain water. The advantage of the bottle is that you can use warm water, of course, which is perhaps more pleasant for the girl, and it's also quite pleasant for the guy, because if the whole area is chilled when you actually make love, then it warms up very quickly, but it's still a bit like, ooh, that's cold when you go in. Okay, so that's the other thing that you do. Another question was, some person said that he had watched the video that I made 3 times, and then he suddenly realised that he had to ask me a question, and the question was, are you talking about anal sex? And the answer is, yes, I am. I've not covered post-operative trans women, because sex with a post-op is exactly the same as sex with an anal woman. There's no difference, just no difference. It's only sex with a pre-op that requires you to think about it a little bit. And it's not that different. It's really not very much. The entrance is in a slightly different place, but what is it? Maybe an inch further back, that sort of thing. It's not enough to worry about anyway. It really isn't. So there you go. Yes, we are talking about anal sex here. That's the only way you can do it with a pre-op ladyboy or any other form of trans woman. As usual, some people commented on the fact that I use the term ladyboy. Well, I can assure you, everybody here who actually is one calls herself that. I've met in, it's well over 100 girls that I have met and talked to, spent time with, and everyone except one, I can only think of one, who didn't like being called a ladyboy. Everybody else is like, what's the problem? The thing is that, particularly in the Philippines, there are 179 recognized languages in the Philippines. Okay? 179. There are 20 designated official languages, and 2 of them, Tagalog and English, are the kind of formal ones, the official government ones. But even in the distance between 2 relatively close towns, people have completely different words for the same thing, because there's 175 different languages. So a global, one-size-fits-all term, which a ladyboy is, works perfectly to solve this problem. And it's the same thing in Thailand. I mean, Thailand doesn't perhaps have the same range of languages, but, they don't all speak standard Thai. And as soon as somebody hears the word ladyboy, they know what they're talking about. And the other thing is, just get over yourselves, because many ladyboys don't like it when people use the official word or the local word like bakla or katoi. It depends on how you say it, and we don't have the kind of subtleties. We don't really understand their language well enough, don't speak it well enough to get it absolutely right. Now, I once heard, in fact, the girl I was speaking about who didn't like being called a ladyboy actually said to me, look, you can call me a bakla because the way you say it, it's not offensive at all, But the way other Filipinos might say it possibly would be. She's an absolutely lovely woman. I'll leave her to one side for the time being. I never had sex with her, but she is a very dear friend. Right, so that's got all that out of the way. Now, the other thing we talked about in the last was a little bit about positions, and we covered the three basic ones, which are cowboy, doggy style, and there was one other, missionary. Now, obviously, humans being as creative as we really are, there's quite a few more that you can investigate, which are particularly suited to sex to making love to a ladyboy. One of these is the supine position, in which she lies on her tummy and you come on top of her and from behind. Now, this one, the sensations are very strong for both parties, and you might be a little bit careful. You might want to be a little bit careful so you don't overdo it. Be guided by her. And if she starts slapping the bed, maybe a little bit more gently. But it's a very agreeable position. Let's put it that way. Another one, and this is for the more wild at heart type, is standing up, where she will normally stand, usually with one arm against the wall and the other arm on you somewhere, and maybe with one foot up on a chair, and you navigate your way from behind. This obviously takes a little bit of practice, because you don't want to go falling over, and it's definitely a more energetic form, but some girls are real enthusiasts for that sort of stuff, and they love it, so you just go with it. You get the same sort of thing in showers, bathrooms. Just make sure she doesn't actually wreck any of the furniture, which I have known to happen. The other ones which you'll see, and you'll see this a lot if you watch porn, which maybe you don't, but doesn't matter if you do or you don't, is what Westerners would call spoons, and which in Philippines is called side view. And in that, the girl lies on her side, and the man also lies on his side, but behind her. It's actually quite difficult to get good penetration this way. The pornmeisters do it because it shows everything that's going on. But it is quite tricky to get into the right position and maintain it. Remember that, we'll come to that in a minute about the tightness. But it is, I have to say, from the point of view of the girl, girls I've spoken to about this say, it is a very comfortable position, and it's partly because you can't get too much depth. So, while we're still on the subject of depth, somebody else asked about the curve into the sigmoid colon. And, I'm sometimes so glad for all those anatomy classes I used to go to. Right. What happens is that once you go into the entrance, there is a straight piece of tube called the sigmoid, so called the rectum, rather. And then it bends. It bends and joins the lower intestine. And that bend is called the sigmoid colon. And this person was worried that in doggy style you would go too deep. Well, let me reassure you a little bit. I will put a picture up here, a drawing up. In the first place, the distance from the entrance to the upper wall of the colon there is around about 20 centimetres. Now that's 8 inches? There's not many men around at risk of getting that far in, to be quite honest with you. Especially given the fact that you can't get it all in because, her bottom's in the way. In some positions you might be able to get closer, but not really. The second thing is, assuming that we are talking about some of the monsters out there, the whole tube is made of connective tissue. It's lined with what's called squamous epithelium, which is a mucous membrane, so it's all very slippery, and it self-lubricates. But it's not really held in place rigidly. So if you push it, it will just move out of the way. Unless you actually insert a sharp object, which you must never ever do, there is really no risk of causing damage. She will feel such pain that she will stop you long before there's any risk of actually tearing anything or causing physical damage. And obviously, if a girl is saying stop, 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 then you stop, obviously. Just going back to positions, another position which is very good and gives you loads and loads of penetration, but comfortable for her, is if she kneels on the bed, facing away from you, and instead of just like a doggy, she actually kneels on the bed so that her legs are right up against her abdomen. That's quite a nice one. Right, so we've discussed depth and sigmoid colons and all that sort of stuff, all these questions that came in. The smell we've done, the non-existent smell, there is no smell. Really, it's just a question, it is different. And it's one of these things, either you'll really like it or you really won't. And if you do really like it, then you're sold for life. There's no doubt about it. It's like, yeah, I just want more of that. Thank you very much. And all straight men love vagina, but yeah, there is something about that weigh-in that is very, very attractive. While we're on the subject of vaginas, however, there is something that's worth mentioning here, which is certainly for someone who's never done this, might become as something of a surprise. A vagina is relatively loose at the entrance, and it tightens up as you go in, right? There's a lot of muscle around a vagina, and that tends to tighten up and grip the man as you go in. And as you possibly know, maybe you don't, but if you do, you might know that when she climaxes, a woman that muscle will really contract and squeeze, and you'll get this kind of almost like a fluttering feeling as it alternatively contracts and relaxes. There is no such muscle around the rectum. The rectum doesn't have a muscular lining. Well, let me put it this way: the muscle that surrounds the vagina is what we call voluntary muscle. It's under the control of the woman. I mean, she might have to learn how to do that, but she can squeeze at will. The muscle which forms the walls of the rectum and the sigmoid colon is what's called involuntary muscle, or sometimes smooth muscle. And you have no control over that. That's operated by a separate part of the brain which you can't really control at all. And that actually is there because it has a function in peristalsis, which is what moves things down through the gut and then out the other end. So the real difference is that when you enter, is that at the entrance, and we're talking about, a trans woman here, at her entrance, that's the tightest point, right? And she slackens off once you get inside, okay? Which is the opposite to what would happen with a natal woman, which is she slack at the beginning, gets tighter as you enter. In a trans woman, and we're talking about a pre-op one, it's tight at the entry and slack inside. And by the way, this is if you're doing this with a natal woman and you like to do both with a natal woman, she's exactly the same. There's no difference there. I mean, it's only the very first part of the anal canal itself which is really strongly muscled. Now, the point here is that's the bit that is exciting. She might like to have her prostate stimulated, which is just a little bit further in, but for the man, that ring of muscle at the opening is the bit that is going to do the number for you, right? That's where you want to be. That's the sweet spot. So a lot of the arguments or the questions about the issues of depth of presentation, yeah, I know what you see in porn because I've seen it, but that's not how you do it. In real life, you're actually trying to get because remember that the male member, the penis, the most sensitive part of that is around the tip and just behind the flange, which I can't remember the name of, but it has a name. Sorry, it was some time ago that I did my anatomy. And what you want to do is to get these two parts, that sensitive part of the penis and those sensitive muscular areas of the anus working together. And that all happens in the first 2 inches. That's all right at the outer end. So like I say, when you see these porn things with people just shoving absolutely ludicrously sized wallopers right up tiny little girls, no, that's not what you do. I mean, these girls, they practice. They really practice for that. They are actresses. That's not how you do it. It's actually much more satisfying for both parties and certainly a lot less painful, I should imagine, if you just work on that first bit, so that you're just inside, just there. And it is really, really nice. If you can maintain that position, then it's fine. Another question that was asked, and boy, it really entertained me, the number of questions that came through, was what about orgasms? And one person was really quite specific and asked, do they come from their penises? Well, yes and no. A girl who is quite young might well come quite strongly from her penis. Depends on the level of hormones she's taking. Her ejaculate will probably be just a clear liquid if she's on a really feminizing dose of hormones. Again, what you see in the movies where they're producing lots and lots of white stuff, they came off the hormones last week, right, in order to be able to do that. That's not normal, right? Normally, if there's ejaculation from the penis on a girl who is taking hormones, then it'll be really just a clear liquid. It won't be big and thick and light, and the amount tends to be smaller. However, and certainly from what I can see, this feels very good, just as good as it does for a guy. But the other thing is, the girls can climax from internal massage. And most people know about the idea of the prostate, which is an organ that sits around the base of the penis inside the male, obviously. And stimulating that will certainly produce an orgasm. And usually that's an orgasm where she does ejaculate. There are other types of orgasm, and one of these comes from as Freud had it, the sensate mucous membranes around the anus, which is that part of the entrance we were talking about before. And girls they come quite explosively. It's more than you will be used to. Most women are not as dramatic as that. But a ladyboy who's being stimulated to climax through penetration anally, she'll be shaking her legs, shaking her head, the whole body will be quivering. It's not something you're going to miss. And she'll grip you. That ring of muscle at the entrance will really grip you. And you won't be able to pull out. Or if you're just in at the tip, it'll skirt you out like that. So it's quite different in that sense. It's great fun. It's always fun. If you're making love with someone and it's not fun, then you need to revise your ideas or stop doing it. Just don't do it because it's meant to be fun. That's the whole point. And the final thing, which I will say here, is that some people have mentioned the idea of natural, that this is not a natural way to make love. Well, I tell you, if you're concerned about that sort of thing, you're probably, it might be because let's put it this way, it might be because you have religious qualms. So I would say to you, why would God have put such sensitive parts inside the anus if he didn't expect them to get used? Doesn't seem very logical to me. There is nothing natural or unnatural in this matter. It's just what gives pleasure. And as long as you don't hurt each other, as long as you don't hurt anyone, either emotionally or physically, as long as you treat their feelings with respect and their bodies gently, then what is the problem? I'm afraid that one of the, I've got lots of friends from the United States, online and in real, and I've known many over my lifetime. But there is a habit amongst a certain group to just assume that they're always right and they have the right to tell everybody else what is right and wrong. Well, you don't. You just don't. Just because you don't want to try something doesn't mean you have the right to tell other people they shouldn't. If it's carried out with care and responsibility, and you take the necessary precautions with things like cleanliness and, if necessary, using a condom, there is no reason why you shouldn't have great fun with your partner having anal sex. And it actually doesn't matter whether your partner is a trans woman, a ladyboy in this case, or a cis woman. That part of them is pretty much the same. The natal woman doesn't have a prostate, but there is a thing called the foam, the vaginal foam. It's like a pad which sits underneath, she's lying down. It would be sitting underneath the vagina, and it's very, very sensitive. But then it's the other way around. It's still contactable from the other side, from the anus. And yeah, she can definitely come from that. Definitely. I've seen that done too, and it's spectacular. So hopefully that fills it in. I don't know if I'll do any more of these. It would seem to be milking it a little bit. If you do have more questions, I will try. Meantime, take care of yourselves, have fun, don't hurt anyone, and treat your partners with respect.